But Cyrax won't kill Sub-Zero, right? So Snoke is like, you have betrayed the Lin Kuei.
Wait, I thought Sub-Zero was the Lin Kuei.
No, see, this is Elder Sub-Zero, so no.
This is so stupid.
I haven't even gotten to the time travel yet. So if this is stupid,
What?
you're going to hate the whole thing.
There he is!
Get him!
Ow! Cecil, get off of me! Why did you say all that mean stuff about
Why
us?
are you like 14% meaner than you usually are?
What,
Yeah,
what the hell are you guys
14%.
talking about?
The telegrams?
Yeah, dude, you were like super mean about it. Way mean.
Sorry, that's actually on me.
Sorry, that's on you, Eli?
Yeah, this week's episode is about the Zimmerman telegram. So I thought, to get us in the spirit, I sent everyone a mean telegram from Noah. Just, get everyone in the war entering spirit.
Aw, no, I'm sorry. I'm sorry about that.
Yeah. I guess, honestly, we should have suspected when he spelled it ignoramus that it was Eli.
But I actually thought it might have been wordplay, but now it makes more sense.
Eli
Yeah.
doesn't do wordplay.
Oh, hey, guys. Sorry, I'm late. Traffic from the suburbs. Nightmare.
Tom, quick, before you do anything, Eli sent the telegram as pre-show shenanigans, so it was not Noah.
Oh, that wasn't you?
No, not Noah.
Huh. Well, I guess Eli's been sending me mean telegrams like every week or so for 2 years in anticipation of this episode.
No. The other ones were from me.
I got it.
Okay, but why a telegram, Noah?
I like to yell at the guy who writes them down.
That
Yeah,
tracks.
okay, sure.
Mm-hmm.
Get that.
Hello and welcome. Citation Needed, podcast where we choose a subject, read a single article about it on Wikipedia, pretend we're experts. Because this is the internet, and that's how it works now. I'm Heath, and I'll be hosting Stop. And I'm joined by a singing telegram quartet that refuses to go to the barbershop. Noah, Tom, Cecil, and Eli. How's everybody doing?
Hello.
Hello.
No.
Nope.
So
Okay.
close.
No.
Thought you were going to do
Right?
Dominant 7.
No.
Seemed like that
We
was what
got
was
there.
set up.
Thought we did a pretty good job.
I feel
of
like
that
we did
until
good.
Eli jumped in.
Auto-tune us, Cecil.
Just
Like
a
little
flash
dogs.
evidence for this.
No.
Cecil, you have
No,
to auto-tune
I
him.
categorically refuse
Do
to
it.
do any audio editing on that.
Oh.
I'm not even going to sync it. I'm just going to let it go the way it is.
Special guest editor for this episode is T-Pain.
All right, let's just get right into it. Noah, what person, place, thing, concept, phenomenon, or event are we going to be talking about today?
Today we're going to be talking about the Zimmerman telegram.
All right, this is Bob Dylan. Stop. I like old-timey messages. Stop. It's a weird topic. Weird. Anyway, let's hear it. What Bob Dylan's name was Robert Zimmerman. What was the Zimmerman telegram?
Keith, were you forbidden to reference music after 1995 by some kind of genie agreement?
Whatever. Bob Dylan has a 97 album that won Grammys. Kind of mine.
And also his references are all pre-1975.
Yeah.
He won a Nobel Prize in 2016. Just keep up.
So the Zimmerman telegram was a coded communication from the German Foreign Office that got intercepted by the British in January of 1917 and then more or less directly led to the then technically neutral United States entering World War I on the Allied side. I mean, there were obviously other factors, but in terms of galvanizing U.S. public opinion, I don't know that there's anything more significant. This is actually a story I've kind of wanted to cover on this show ever since we started it, but it's all full of nuance and backstory. And yeah, I know you guys hate nuance and backstory.
Ooh, nuance. This is 2021, Noah. Nuance got ratioed on Twitter. It's dead.
No, that's true. That's true. So the telegram itself, of course.
Bigots who say that are assholes. That I want to distance myself from whatever that is. They say nuance is good. Not that. Not when they do that. I'm doing a different thing.
I'm talking about the non-bigoted nuance. It feels weird when I say that.
There's nuance to nuance. Whatever.
So the telegram itself, of course, is pretty simple. It's a proposal to Mexico of a military alliance should the U.S. enter the war. Basically, it's Germany saying, hey, if the U.S. joins the British, you're on our side, and we'll pay you to keep them busy on their own continent. In exchange, once the war is over, you get to have Texas, Arizona, and New Mexico. And that's pretty straightforward. But to really understand it, we need to dive into like just a very quick backstory on British cryptography, Woodrow Wilson, Mexican-U.S. relations, Japan-U.S. relations, German-Mexican relations, the Monroe Doctrine, submarine military strategy, and the first 2.5 years of World War I.
Roosevelt corollary.
If you want to make an apple pie from scratch, the first thing you have to do is create the universe. After that,
Exactly.
Yeah, fine.
Cecil
All right,
gets it.
but if at any time, Noah, I hear about fucking Etruscan pottery, you're going to need all the allies you can get.
Oh, man, I really hope that somehow works in.
I tried. Believe me, I tried. So let's start with the code itself. Of course, back then, we didn't have any of these fancy satellites and cell phones. We had one fancy satellite, but only in a pedantic way. The point is, communication was still very wired. Radio was a thing, but by 1917, we were still years away from the first commercial broadcast. So if you wanted to communicate between continents, you had to send your message through underwater cables, which is a phenomenally awesome feat of engineering, especially for the time, but also a very prone one. Right, because it's way too big for you to really do it in secret. Everybody kind of notices the gigantic cable you have just trailing out into the ocean, and cutting them is way easier than repairing them.
Same with 50% of all marriages.
That's certainly a lot cheaper.
In the long run, yeah, if you amortize it, yeah. In what may actually have been their first act of war against Germany, the UK, the country with a vastly superior navy, just went out and snipped all of Germany's cables. There's more to it than that, obviously, but they cut all the cables, and it was clear, even before the shooting started, of course, that this was going to be a war that was won by whoever could rustle up the most allies. Right, so obviously depriving their enemy of easy ways to get their message out to potential allies was a pretty basic first step.
Germans are laying down cables. The British Navy's just sitting there. Hey, you guys almost done? Whenever you're just let us know.
Oh, these giant shears, they're for my garden? It's an ocean garden.
Playing rock, paper, scissors.
Let me know when you're done.
Now, of course, nobody wanted Germany to be entirely cut off from communication, right? After all, if a Kaiser says, I surrender in the woods, and there's nobody around to hear it, doesn't really happen. What's more, at least one of the thank you. What's more, at least one of the transcontinental cables that Germany uses was American owned, and the British were desperately trying to avoid pissing off the Americans. So they left that one untouched with the tacit understanding that the U.S. wouldn't allow Germany to use it to send coded messages. To do so, in fact, would be a violation of neutrality according to international law. But it turned out Woodrow Wilson was the kind of guy that didn't give a whole bunch of shits about international law if he thought he was more correct than it. So ultimately, he did allow Germany to send coded messages through their cable.
Okay, it seems like a lot to keep track of, though. Was somebody color coding all the fucking cables down there? Like some diver 300 feet underwater batting off sharks. Okay, now, don't cut the red, white, and blue wire.
It exploded. How did it explode? That doesn't even make sense.
They all look the same down here. It's not.
The light doesn't penetrate this far. So, all right. So despite his violation of the clearly recognized and agreed upon rules of neutrality, Britain didn't make a big fuss about Woodrow Wilson bending those rules. Now, his administration probably thought that was because they didn't fucking know about it. Right? It's not like he made a public declaration that he was bending the rules in Germany's favor. But Britain actually did know, because it turned out that they'd been tapping the American cable since basically day one of the war to listen in on those bottlenecked German communications.
British intelligence is the best.
Oh, they're so fucking awesome, especially when it comes to code breaking. And speaking of which, they weren't making a big fuss about it because it turned out they'd pretty much already broken all of the German diplomatic codes, and the false confidence that Wilson's allowance afforded them was a fucking gold mine for British intelligence.
Okay, just promise you won't use Pig Latin on the cables. It's weird that I even said I don't even know what Pig Latin is. Well, in British intelligence, we don't know what that is, but don't.
All right, so yeah, speaking of which, that brings us around to Room 40. That's the term the British Admiralty used for their cryptanalysis department during the First World War. Now, the group didn't actually occupy a room numbered 40 and hadn't in years, but even when they moved into a bigger facility in a newer building, they managed to retain the name Room 40. So anyway, they get this telegram along with a batch of other communications, and they set about decoding it. What they find is a telegram from German Foreign Minister Arthur Zimmermann to his Mexican ambassador. So here it is in its entirety.
Okay, we're going to have to vote on this. I say we make Noah read this in an old-timey voice and say stop after every period.
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
Absolutely. That has to be done.
Right.
Yes. That's
unanimous, I guess. Okay. Quote, we intend to begin.
Start.
We intend to begin on the 1st of February unrestricted submarine warfare. Stop. We shall endeavor, in spite of this, to keep the United States of America neutral. Stop. In the event of this not succeeding, we make Mexico a proposal of alliance on the following basis. Make war together, make peace together. Generous financial support and an understanding on our part that Mexico is to reconquer the lost territories in Texas, New Mexico, and Arizona. Stop. The settlement in detail is left to you. Stop. You will inform the president of the above most secretly as soon as the outbreak of war with the United States of America is certain, and add the suggestion that he should, on his own initiative, invite Japan to immediate adherence and at the same time mediate between Japan and ourselves. Stop. Please call the president's attention to the fact that the ruthless employment of our submarines now offers the prospect of compelling England in a few months to make peace. Signed, Zimmerman. Stop. And
Bravo. Well done. Well done, sir. Well done.
Did they say pause for commas when they were dictating that?
Are you going to make him do it again?
Yeah, there was a colon in there that
I really didn't know what
largely
to do with colon, man.
ignored.
This is a lost fucking art.
Semi-pause. Semi-pause?
No, so it would be hard to overstate what a big deal this is in terms of British war aims, okay? So by now, the First World War has been going on for 2.5 years, and most of those years have been spent in this barbaric stalemate that was costing thousands and sometimes tens of thousands of lives a day. And the sides were so thoroughly entrenched at this point that it was virtually impossible that one of them was going to break through the enemy lines. So this had become a war of attrition. That meant that the only way to swing the balance of the war would be to get a whole bunch of more shit than the other side. And the only still neutral country with enough shit to matter in that sense, really, was the U.S. Both sides knew that if the U.S. entered the war, A, it'd be entering on the Allied side, and B, it would mean an Allied victory.
I don't know, Noah. I learned in history class that we came in and we saved everyone with our grit and our bootstraps. Did the telegram mention the thread of our grit and our bootstraps?
Probably said something about that. There was a second telegram, actually.
Rough Rider,
but,
no comment.
So now, here
DMX.
the British cryptographers have a decoded message that would enrage the U.S. public and very possibly incite them to war. In 164 words, Zimmerman had provided something that could very easily have meant the difference between winning and losing, but they had two major problems still. The first was how they got it, and the second was how they knew what they had.
Yeah, that's the STD dilemma right there.
Yeah, and then the real bitch is Britain's then got to call everyone it fucked recently. And in 1917, that's a lot of phone calls.
I fucked you. Stop.
All right, so problem number one is that the whole goal here is to make America mad at Germany, but if you make them mad at England at the same time, you're no longer working towards your goal. And this was all possible, of course, because the British were spying on the American cable. They weren't just spying on the German stuff, right? So if they just rush over to the U.S. Embassy with it, it's going to sound an awful lot like, man, you're never going to believe what I came across when I was reading your mail.
Okay. If the British Navy is running the show in the Atlantic, I feel like you just snip the Mexico to Germany cable and just like reroute it to a US cable at that point, right? And then everybody starts doing the same thing. You get this like fun Shakespeare sitcom wacky mix-up situation.
Sergeant, why are you dressed like a princess? It's for spying, sir. Spying.
All right, so, but the second problem is actually way stickier. The actual telegram that they had is, of course, encoded. Now, they know the code, so they can see what it says, but if this telegram is meant to do its job, it can't just be something that passes from British intelligence to American intelligence and, we'll be very, discreet with your sources. It has to go to the American public. So how do you give it to them without telling Germany that you've broken their fucking code? And even if you're willing to admit that, what if Germany just lies and says that's not what that code means? Right? Room 40 is relying on a code book that they got from a double agent, not some brilliant cryptographic deduction. And they can't actually just trot out the code book to prove their point without A, getting their double agent killed, and B, opening themselves up to the obvious German rebuttal of, we've never seen that code book before. What the fuck are you talking about? I've never seen that.
Yeah, what are they going to say? We wrote to Mexico for a huevos ranchero recipe?
That would make sense, though, man. They were hungry at that time.
Is somebody worried that they're going to be like, okay, I know they're bombing us and choking our teenagers with mustard gas, but they wouldn't lie to us, too. Not the Germans.
the British were also, they might not have been used in mustard gas, but they were also killing a lot of teenagers. So, but here's British intelligence literally holding in their hand a weapon that could win them the war, and they have no fucking idea how they're going to use it.
And America eventually learned that you just make an apocalypse bomb, and that strategy is way simpler. It's just like really obvious what you do with that. But I like that England is trying to win a war with like a deep finesse in bridge right here. Before we get to that, we're going to take a quick break for some apropos of nothing.
President Wilson, thank you so much for taking the meeting.
Happy to be here, Prime Minister British person. How can I help?
I was wondering, would you be interested in a quick game of charades?
What now?
You know, the party game, a bit of ballyhoo.
Prime Minister, I don't...
Oh, please, Mr. President, it shall be very, very fun.
Fine. Fucking Brits. Okay. 6 words. Eating a tube. Tube hungry. Never mind. Next word. Small word. The a is. Something is walking, running, going. Tube eater is going. Small word. He is tube eater is going to stab punch tiger.
Seriously, tiger?
You're not allowed to talk. Don't talk, okay? We're playing a game. Attacks. Someone's going to attack me.
Fantastic. You got it, Mr. President.
Nice. I knew I would. Anyway, so what's the news with Mexico here? Any word?
No. Nothing. None.
Too bad. Okay. Well, you want to watch Birth of a Nation again?
Nope. No, I don't.
I love that movie. It's so good.
I know you do.
Yeah. Costuming.
And we're back. When we left off, England was thinking about leaving a wet printout of a telegram on the steps of the White House in a flaming bag of shit and diving into the bushes after they rang the doorbell. What is next?
Certainly considered. Okay. So by the end of 1916, both sides in World War I can see a clear path to victory. On the Allied side, the British had a pretty effective naval blockade that had been keeping damn near everything out of German harbors, right? Like technically they have to let humanitarian stuff through, like food and medicine and shit. But they're just as likely to be like, I don't know. Be like, you could shoot those potatoes at us and confiscate that shit too.
Yeah, well, and that one kid with a can of Aquanet and the PVC pipe ruined it for everybody. So.
Well, right, yeah, exactly. All tubers are out now. And at this point, the German people were damn near starving, so England figures they just need to stay the course, and pretty soon Germany's people are going to demand an end to the war, if for nothing but a meal that doesn't involve a boiled fucking turnip.
Whew. Good thing they weren't fighting the Irish, am I right?
Yeah, right?
It'd be a real Holocaust.
No. So oddly enough, the German path to victory was basically the same. Right. So the Russian government was on the brink of collapse already. The Russian Revolution was literally a couple of months away by the end of 1916. So they really just needed to worry about England. And England was only able to stay in the war at this point because the U.S. was bending the shit out of the definition of neutrality and supplying all kind of raw materials and money. The kind of shit that England needed to keep feeding the fronts. Now, England has the bigger navy above the water, but one of Germany's biggest advantages here is that they have some really kick-ass submarines, and they've got a lot of the motherfuckers.
I Googled this, hoping that I could find like a World War I submarine with look like a barrel with a snorkel on it, but they pretty much look like modern submarines. You're right.
Yeah, no,
they had kick-ass submarines.
Except they're nuclear powered. Yeah. So now, speaking of exactly that, though, the Brits actually had submarines as well. They just weren't as good or as plentiful as the German U-boats. And also, it didn't really matter.
I bet it mattered
Right,
to
like-
the guys who were in the not as good submarines, though. Like,
Well, no, I mean,
oh, we're the sinky one. Oh, we're the sinky one. That sucks.
well, they're all sinky, actually, Tom. That's the point. So, no, but so the thing is that you don't actually really need submarines when you have the larger surface navy. Right? Through most of the war, the submarines had turned out to be a non-factor on both sides, but there was a faction within the German government that still thought that they were the key to victory so long as the German leadership was willing to use them right. And using them right meant killing the fuck out of a lot of civilians.
Okay, it's an invisible missile silo underwater. What's the white hat function of that? Faction, they're clearly lying, that faction.
So, okay, but see, like, in a perfect world, the submarines would be able to just take out military ships and ships with military supplies, right? That would be the goal in a, humane war, whatever the hell that means. But unlike the British blockade, submarines can't board the ship and see what it's carrying and find all those dangerous potatoes. Right? Like if they try to board the ship, they lose the advantage they have of being a submarine. And since ships carrying war materials don't have the decency to scrawl that visibly along their hull, the only way to effectively blockade somebody with submarines is to just shoot down everything you come across. This is a strategy that history has euphemized as unrestricted submarine warfare.
You somehow just described the war on drugs with submarines.
So for years now, some German commanders had been pushing for this strategy, the unrestricted submarine warfare. And it got more and more popular the more civilians felt the effects of the British blockade and the more the trenches calcified along the Western Front. Like, at a certain point, every idea that hadn't been tried yet got more and more popular as the war dragged on. But this one actually had the possibility to be a game changer.
Okay, again, so the rule up until now allowed for the slow starvation of civilians, but not like blowing up their sea merchants.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Yeah,
out of
right.
line.
No, it's just a question of speed. Well, no, they had to let them have the potatoes unless they were war potatoes, you see. So, no, but of course, this whole thing has a downside. Obviously, like what unrestricted submarine warfare meant in practice was torpedoing American cargo ships and passenger ships for that matter. Not that a lot of Americans were like, vacationing in Europe.
Now it's
at the
time
time
for
or
a
anything.
cruise. The rates are amazing.
Yeah, right. No, but it meant killing American civilians occasionally by the hundreds. And that meant potentially awakening the sleeping giant that could turn the tide of the fucking war. And basically every German diplomat and war planner that knew anything at all about America or American culture or American industrial power warned that this was a terrible fucking idea. But eventually, all the good ideas got used up, so the only thing left is the terrible ideas, and ultimately the Kaiser agreed to torpedo any ship with the temerity to exist in the North Atlantic.
Okay, with all that industrial power that we had in the U.S., why didn't we just make submarines with it? Like we didn't have enough time to collect bricks, wool, and ore and grain. We roll badly. Just make fucking submarines.
Well, Heath, America has had the robber on our space pretty much since we started. So.
Is that a Catan thing?
Well, it wouldn't. Yeah,
It's a
So,
Catan thing.
up until this point, the main thing standing between America and war was a bitchily truculent president in the form of Woodrow Wilson. So I want to be super clear on this. Woodrow Wilson is shit.
Fuck Woodrow Wilson.
Oh, he's the fucking worst. He's only not the worst because it's presidents and that has Andrew Jackson and fucking Donald Trump in it, but he's awful. For decades, history treated him like he was some cross between Gandhi and War Jesus, so it makes emphasizing his shittiness all the more important because he was fucking shit.
Gandhi and War Jesus is the name of my Rush cover band. I like that.
Oh,
Okay,
it's
cool.
a great name for a rush cover.
So good.
But no, honestly, Jesus and Gandhi are kind of shit too, but that's beyond the scope of this essay. The point
We got a whole
is
other
that
podcast
Wilson,
for that one.
yeah, right. No. But the point is that Wilson is often portrayed as this stalwart for peace that held back the forces of war as long as anyone could have, damn it. And that might have been the case, honestly, but it was more out of a naive paternalism and epic levels of self-regard than any high-minded ideals. He was all the way convinced that everybody just needed to shut up and listen to his completely unworkable plan that was filled with non-starters for both sides and just agree to end the war on a perpetual timeout where everybody says they're sorry like they mean it.
It's a lot harder to tell the downstairs neighbors to knock it the fuck off when you don't have any nukes to back it up.
Right. It's a great idea with masking tape right down the middle of Europe. Nobody listens. This is ridiculous.
That is so close to his idea.
I'm Woodrow Wilson.
Yeah, Wilson's famous. If you don't cut it out, I'm turning this tank around gambit. Only topped by the one time he threatened to give Britain and Germany something to cry about.
Yeah. Actually, that he did do. That's what ended the war. Now, I should also point out, by the way, that Woodrow Wilson was a vicious, despicable racist that set civil rights for African Americans back 50 years at least. It's not particularly relevant to the story, but anytime anyone ever brings up Woodrow Wilson, you should point that shit out. The motherfucker screened Birth of a Nation at the White House, for fuck's sake.
Okay, so it's not just pandemics that are back in vogue in America after 100 years.
Good.
Good.
It's like 50-50 that Trump showed that at some point. Yeah.
Yeah, right? Now, so Woodrow Wilson had campaigned on keeping America out of the war, and he was adamant about doing that. There are a lot of people now who think that was all a front, and he was actually trying to manipulate the American people into war from the beginning, but that seems like a weird strategy, like making not doing what you want to do the primary plank in your election campaign. I don't know. So I don't think we need to take that all too seriously, but there were definitely plenty of people in his cabinet that wanted to go to war. And while the popular interpretation is to call these folks warmongers, it's at least worth mentioning that this war was causing death on unprecedented scales. Nobody doubted that U.S. involvement would end it quicker. So plunging the U.S. into the war would definitely save lives overall, just not American lives. Right now, this is a shitty argument, to be clear. That's a shitty argument. You could use that to justify involvement in any war ever, basically. Right. So I'm not bringing it up to excuse those folks so much as to explain them.
Yeah, I'm guessing like the trolley problem for these guys, not much of a problem.
Right.
Really
exactly.
Keep it going on schedule. Why are we even talking about this?
If we hit these people and jump, can we jump them like Dukes of Hazzard and land back on the tracks?
You're not going to slow down the trolley, though, right? No matter what I do, the trolley keeps going.
Right, yeah, exactly.
The trolley problem is the Dukes of Hazzard. I like that.
Now, okay, so if anything in the universe, though, is going to sway Wilson towards war, it's going to be this fucking telegram, okay? Because Woodrow Wilson suffers from the same problem that every man who believes himself to be perfectly logical suffers from. He isn't perfectly logical. But because he doesn't recognize that sometimes his emotions get the best of him, there's no internal check on his emotions getting the best of him. So like everybody who thinks they're perfectly logical, they're less logical than the average person. He was in the middle of basically personally negotiating for peace with the Germans at the time this all happened. And during those negotiations, they're sending messages to Mexico suggesting maybe we nab a couple of states while the getting's good. So clearly that's going to piss him off. What's more, they were doing it in coded messages that he personally allowed them to send on an American fucking cable.
Okay, to be fair to Wilson, that is a lot for someone to take. It's like, okay.
Yeah, right?
All right. All right, you call me fucking the wedding planner on our bed. The wedding planner's your mom. You seem mad. Are you mad?
Right.
You seem mad.
Right, so that would have been plenty enough to enrage him. And once enraged, he'd be unable to back down because that's how Woodrow Wilson was. But to get there, you still have to give him the telegram without telling him how you got it.
Yeah, just call yourself Sir Q Esquire. Put it on 1chan. Call it a day.
Ooh, splice it into Birth of a Nation, maybe. You know he's going to
there you go.
All right,
yeah. So step one, they invent a pretend agent in Mexico and then just say that he got this telegram from a contact in the German embassy in Mexico, right? That takes care of the problem of pissing off the Americans and letting them know that you're tapping their international communications. But it still doesn't solve the problem of how they make this public without letting the Germans know they've broken the diplomatic code. And this is one problem they ultimately can't really solve. But they figure that since this is a potentially war-winning reveal, it's actually worth taking that risk and burning that code.
Okay, it's weird that Germany wasn't ever changing out their code every once in a while. They were just like,
oh, you have no idea,
it's
dude.
Germany password 123 until somebody hacks it, and then we murder the whole staff who knew the code. We start over. That's what it is.
I mean, Heath, have you tried to teach your grandma to use an iPad? because this was her grandma. You know what I'm saying?
All right, so they pass along the telegram to Wilson, and as predicted, he completely loses his shit. He's ready to go to war that minute, but his underlings remind him that the American people largely still support neutrality, and his campaign slogan was basically, I sure as hell am not going to get us involved in World War I. So they leak the telegram and the fact that the White House is in possession of it to the Associated Press. Now, this part could have been super, super delicate, because all Germany has to do is go, nuh-uh, and the whole fucking thing falls apart. Right? There's literally no way for America or the British to prove what the coded telegram said.
Yeah, no, I think we're overstating the case for the American public's need for evidence a little
Yeah,
bit.
okay. All right.
Yeah.
Well, but it depends on what you're trying to convince them. Like, tell them that a fucking vaccine is safe, for example, and see how much they want. Right? So, but what's more, if the American people find out it came from British intelligence, they're just going to assume England was lying to try to trick us into joining the war on their side. So naturally, the Wilson administration had a bunch of half-assed defenses concocted for just such an occasion, but it turned out they didn't need any of them. Because in one of the dumbest diplomatic blunders in the history of fucking Earth, Zimmerman just admitted this shit was real. And he's like, no, but that was if America went to war. I said if.
They asked if I said that. It's like being a cop. I said, yeah.
Is that not like being a cop?
Okay, but like, to be fair, our last president literally couldn't stop committing crimes on recorded audio, and this is his grandpa. You know what I'm saying? They don't get smarter.
Fair, yeah. All right, so historians have been trying to figure out for a century now what the fuck Zimmerman was thinking. And as far as I can tell, the consensus now is that this stems from the spectacular arrogance of German culture at the time, okay? So Germans had such high opinions of their own intelligence as compared to everybody else in the world that they never seriously considered the idea that somebody was able to decode their messages.
It's 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, it's 3.
Right, yeah, exactly. They don't even know how many digits we used. So Zimmerman assumed they had to have something more than just this code, right? So he figured that lying about it was just going to make him look bad later on when the entirety of their evidence came out, right? Like if he said, nah, and then the Mexican president is like, no, you guys totally proposed that, he'd lose a lot of credibility.
Let's just all sort of wistfully think about a time when lying made politicians look bad. Let's just stop for a second and all sigh. Man,
I don't remember that in my lifetime.
So, no, but I read about it in the storybooks. So another amazing consequence, by the way, of that German arrogance, as Heath has already hinted at, is that they never stopped using that broken code for the entire war. In fact, they kept sending messages back and forth between Mexico and Germany using that same code that were being intercepted by the British, trying to figure out how the fuck the Americans got a hold of that telegram.
Okay. Meanwhile, there's just a can with a string jutting out from the middle of one of their cables in the ocean. Some guy's listening like, okay, we figured out their code. They just speak German. Does anyone know German? Pretty much got it there.
All right, so American opinions on the war basically changed overnight when this telegram was confirmed. Newspapers that had supported neutrality the day before were endorsing the war one after the other. News of the telegram broke in early March, and America officially declared war on Germany on April 6th. And while there were plenty of reasons for America's about-face, even Woodrow Wilson's hand-picked biographer says that the Zimmerman telegram was probably the most decisive.
All right, Noah, if you had to summarize what you've learned in one sentence, what would it be?
Woodrow Wilson is a racist piece of bigoted shit.
Okay. Noted. And are you ready for the quiz?
Always.
All right, Noah. This, by far, is the most interesting story involving a telegram until A, the next message on Telegram that we get into war over, or B, that is almost certainly going to happen.
Yeah, right. Trump's going to probably run again in 2024. Yeah, so I'm going to go with A. It's got to be A.
That
all right,
both
Noah.
of them would have been.
What's the worst thing a sailor could be diagnosed with on a World War I submarine? A, narcolepsy. B, mustard gastritis. Or C, Marianas Trench mouth.
That's good.
I'm going to go with secret answer D, being on a World War I submarine.
I'll do it.
You are correct.
All right, Noah, the Zimmerman telegram is a fascinating story. It involves spies, wars, and a chance to call Woodrow Wilson a racist piece of shit a bunch of times. But that name is boring. What should we title this episode to get more clicks? A, Mexican MILF, that's monarch I'd like to fuck, gets caught cheating. B, the secret German doctors don't want you to know. Also, German politicians and generally Germany doesn't want you to know.
Okay.
C, you won't believe what they found in Zimmerman's ear. Or D, Mia Khalifa said, what?
Oh, God, I fear that this correct answer is secret answer E is something transphobic, but I don't want to say it. So I'm going to go with B. I'm going to go with B.
Oh,
It was Mia
incorrect.
Khalifa.
It's Mia Khalifa.
Ah,
It's
it
Mia
had to
Khalifa
be.
says
It's always.
what? Yeah,
Yeah.
All right. Eli, you're the winner. You stumped him.
that's right. And that means I want Heath to do the next essay about Mia Khalifa.
Okay, well. I'm on board. All right. I'm actually a big fan. I follow her on Twitter. All right, well, for Tom, Noah, Cecil, and Eli, I'm Heath. Thank you for hanging out with us today. We'll be back next week. And by then, I apparently will be an expert on something else. Between now and then, you can hear Tom and Cecil on Cognitive Dissonance, and you can hear Eli, Noah, and myself on God Awful Movies, Scathing Atheist, Skeptocrat, and D&D minus.
Hey, that one of us was in the New York Times. So.
Was.
Yeah.
Just
Wait,
recently.
Wait, which one
Congrats,
of us
guys.
was in the New York
That's
Times?
awesome.
D&D minus.
Were we in the New York Times? Boing. And if you don't know how to thank us, if you have no idea, you just don't know how to thank us for all the work we do, the answer is money. We want money for that. We would like you to give us
Absolutely.
money for that. You can make a per episode donation at patreon.com/citationpod. And if you'd like to get in touch with us, listen to past episodes, connect with us on social media, take a look at the show notes, check out citationpod.com.